Data scientists are a new breed of planners that use scientific methods, algorithms, and systems to extract knowledge from data. But the truth is, most data scientists make terrible demand planners. But this is only half the story, and I'll tell you why. Let's get to it. Welcome. Yes, we're having a celebration. We just surpassed 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So officially, that makes me a YouTuber. It's already now someone to do a meme of me, or I can have my own bobblehead. And I'll be official then. Actually, this is about a community. It is about you, the community. So I need you to help me continue to like, share, subscribe, and continue to let me know what you want to hear. Because this is what this is all about. Coming together on every 2 weeks, talking about a subject, and you giving me feedback of what you want to hear and comment down below. We also have a great addition to this as well, Arkiva. They're our sponsor. They've been with us from the beginning. They're helping us keep this going. I'd like to thank Arkiva to be part of this as well. Your one-stop S&OP software solution. So full demand suite, S&OP, supply, inventory, everything you need to know in one package. Check them out as well and thank them for being part of this as well. I talked in the very beginning about data scientists. They're making bad demand planners. And I'll agree, that is a general comment. Do I have anything to back that up? I actually do have a little bit of numbers to be able to back that statement up just a little bit. IBF does a lot of research. Check it out at ibf.org. Look at all the research we've done. Dr. Jane, the one that does majority of the research done, he's been doing it for years. We do surveys. He does a lot of other research from his university as well. And looking at some of that research that's been done was looking at forecast error by what your degree is. And I know this doesn't say data science as a degree, but it looks at engineering. And that's the closest I could come really to a STEM type science as far as a degree. And it looks like engineering had the worst forecast accuracy of anything that was measured. And don't get too excited out there, because supply chain, you were the second worst out there. Turns out finance was number one. So it goes to show you that maybe engineering supply chain isn't the best place for forecasting. And we're going to talk a little bit about that data science part of it and the engineering and that science mindset going into this, and if they can make good demand planners. And that's a general question. I'm not throwing every data scientist under the bus. I think there's some good data science out there that make great demand planners. And there's some good demand planners out there that make great data science. So I am talking generalities, but I do want to have this discussion. And I decided to have this discussion. I brought in one of the best I know. Nicolas Vandeput is actually, he wrote the book on this. He's an author of Data Science for Supply Chain Forecasting. He's an experienced supply chain data scientist specializing in demand forecasting, inventory optimization. He founded SUP Chains in 2016 as the co-founder of SKU Science in 2018. He's passionate about education. Nicolas is both an avid learner and he enjoys teaching at universities in Brussels, Belgium. He published Data Science for Supply Chain Forecasting in 2018. He's got a new book coming out in 2020, probably late summer or fall, on models and inventory optimization. So with that, I want to welcome Nicolas to the show.
Thank you, Eric.
I mentioned at the beginning, you wasn't there at the beginning, Nicolas, but actually I called all data scientists out. I said data scientists make horrible demand planners. So I decided to bring in the person who actually wrote the book about this, Data Science for Supply Chain Forecasting, and either A, prove me wrong, or A, tell me why I'm right. Because I've had this question come to me a lot, and I don't know if, where you fall on this as well, but I figured it'd be great to have this conversation with someone in this field and understands a lot better. I said a lot better than I would. So I want to have this discussion with you. So with this, I want to have this discussion of data science and demand planning. Is it the same thing? Can it be the same thing? So with that, I want to kick off that first question to you of exactly what do you feel data science is?
Wow, that's a really cool and really interesting question. I have a nice friend of mine who is a PhD in stats, and I am myself a data science guy. And we often discuss with students about models. And he would look at me saying, "Nicolas is a cowboy, don't trust this guy." And I would look at him saying, "Don't trust this guy because the model do not work." And we ended up discussing a lot about stat and data science. And in the end, we just end up saying, you know what, data science, let's just say it's a mindset. It's a mindset of, if you look for some answers, if you're asking yourself questions, instead of thinking first about a model, you're just going to open your computer, look at data, and try to understand, okay, what is the data telling me? So I think this is the mindset about data science. If you're looking for answers, you're going to first look at the data and just see what data is telling you. I think that's what I would call data science, right? I'm not a formal guy, so I would live with this definition.
That's a great definition. And to be fair, I mean, I was a little bit hard with my statement at first. I mean, it's clickbait. Hey, I want to get people involved and listening to what you had to say on this. And believe me, I'm just as hard on the demand planners saying they can't be good data scientists either. But I really see there's some synergy between them. But I wanted to kind of first, focus on that data science part of it type situation, because I know there's a lot of good data scientists out there that have, good planning skills as well. But they take that science side of it. I mean, that's a key word in data science. What makes it the science part? What separates it out from a type of a planning mindset, like you said, to a scientific method mindset? What's the difference there?
So for me, this word science is really important. And with science, I like to say that I have a scientific mindset. I like to experiment. I'm trying out stuff. When I start a project with a client, with a company, people ask me, okay, how much extra accuracy do you think we could expect? How is it going to work? Will it work? And I'm saying, well, I think it might work. It might work or might not. Let's just experiment, right? It's science. We never know for sure if it's going to work or by how much it's going to work. So this experimental mindset where you just, okay, today I have an idea, let's test it. Let's open the data, let's try this idea, let's try this new model, we see if it's going to work. That's the science, right? Now, if you're a planner, I somehow doubt that every day you could come to work and say to your boss and supply chain, okay, today we're going to do something totally different and we're just going to see at the end of the day if it worked. That would just bring chaos, I think. So when you do data science, inside this mindset, you have the data mindset that I just described, looking at data. And the other part is the scientific mindset where you just say, okay, I'm going to try out thing. And if it doesn't work, I'm just going to leave it aside. If it works, I'm going to keep it. Concerning this sentence I just said, if it doesn't work, I take it out. I think it's really important as a data scientist to accept that from time to time, stuff that you really think you would really believe that it would work and it didn't work, right? It happens to me all the time. I had some crazy good ideas. I was sure it would work. And you know what? It was a total failure. I think that as data scientists, it's really important that we just let it go and move on to new ideas.
Okay, so I mean, that's interesting because it sounds almost like a curiosity that you have in finding, what's this going to happen if this, and if that, then that. It's almost like a curiosity you have then.
Yeah. You are always for the lookout for new ideas, new models. And I said many good ideas I had didn't work out, and many bad ideas or ideas I thought like this is never going to work ended up working really well. But also by listening to demand planners and supply chain professionals that do not know anything about machine learning. And from time to time, they tell me, okay, Nicolas, but did you ever thought about looking at this specific piece? Or what about this one? And just by discussing with these people, getting those kind of ideas, I would bring those ideas back to my computer, back to the data, test them out. And some of those ideas work really great. In the end, it means that people that do not know how to use machine learning can end up having some great ideas for it.
Okay. Now, you mentioned something that there's, something doesn't work. that kind of brings me to another thought, and kind of one of those differences I've seen is the ambiguity part of it. Demand planners' life, they live in a world of ambiguity. They're never right, is what it said. They, just hope to be close. They're always not dealing in precision, but dealing more in a range. But at the same time, I've seen a lot of people that were in the data science don't have that supply chain, don't have that business acumen part of it. They struggle with that ambiguity piece of it, because if it doesn't work, they're used to, example, if I give enough, samples of a dog, I expect it to be able to predict a dog with some accuracy going forward. Where here you're doing in forecasting business and units, you're never going to be right. Is that ambiguity a problem that really needs to be overcome by some data scientists then?
For me, I actually, on the other side, I like to see as data science as also people that like to track how sure they are about something. When you talk about this idea of, classification between cats and dogs, people like to say, my model will be able at 97, 99% to be sure that this is a dog or this is a cat. So when you go to forecasting, it's also the same kind of idea, except that the accuracy will be much, much lower. You just say, I think we're going to sell 100, but it could be 150. So somehow I would say that data science accept this ambiguity, accept the fact that you're not 100% sure it's a dog. The same way as when you do a forecast, you say it's 100, but it might be 120 and you're still good. So I would say these two go along.
Okay. So we really can find that synergy there between, and really have that probability mindset. So not only the curiosity of a data scientist, but really thinking probabilities more so is what you're saying, opposed to thinking in ambiguity. You're thinking more in probabilities. And that's a good way of thinking, I think, that a lot of demand planners can actually learn from.
Yeah, so for sure, when you look, coming back to the first discussion about what's data science, in data science, you try to be as accurate as you can, but you totally accept that being able at 99% to identify a dog is good enough. That's even really good. Doing a forecast with an accuracy of, let's say, 80%, this is really good. When you work with statisticians, they want to create perfect model, and then you might end up into some kind of an issue. So I would say that data scientists are totally ready to do forecasting model.
A lot of forecasting is more of a process. I always say that demand planners manage assumptions, they don't manage numbers. So it's more of a process that you're managing. And sometimes it's a weekly process. It's the same process that you're doing week in, week out, that you're managing, opposed to more of a project focused or method that you're really managing from a data scientist. Is that a true type of difference, or is there really some synergy there as well?
So for sure, it's totally a difference. As a demand planner, you have a monthly process, you have stakeholder to manage, you need to talk to, the client, the finance team, the CEO, the marketing team, the production team, and so on. As a data scientist, you work more as on project, right? You're gonna get a data set, you're gonna try to imagine and come up with a new model. You're gonna also talk to the stakeholder to understand, what's relevant, what's not, what data is available, because that's also a big issue. But in the end, it's a project. Once all of this has been defined, you start to work on the data, you start to work on the model, and at some point you're going to get a model that works. You give it to the demand planner, and then the demand planner can run it every month. Of course, those kind of model needs to be updated, let's say every 12 to 24 months to look, do we have any new data or something? But that's definitely not a monthly process.
Okay, so that's interesting. What I heard you say there was that in your thoughts, you have this modeling purpose, the person that's really, the curiosity, the focused on the method, the modeling aspect of it, does the modeling and then hands it over to a demand planner, is what you said. So you always see potential in the future. These are still two different types of skill sets and roles.
That's a very interesting question. I would say that if you look back historically, the same model have been applied for forecasting for maybe 40 years, right? Since the 60s and until, I guess, 2010, 2015, you had exponential smoothing forecasts. If I was a demand planner in the 90s or the early 2000s, I had maybe done a class about exponential smoothing 8 hours, 10 hours on it. I know everything that's required to know about it, and that was it. I knew the model. Nowadays, those models evolve every single year. Every single year, you get new model on the market that would allow you to do forecasting. So it's really difficult for demand planners to know all of these models, right? And to be up to date on all of them. Now, I do really think that if you have a deep expertise of your market, of your business as a demand planner, you really know your data, you know what client is important, what, I don't know, seasonality or is promotion important, and so on, you could be a really good data scientist for this specific problem because, well, you know what's relevant and what's not. But on the other hand, those two things, so data science and demand planning, are different things. Creating model as a data scientist calls for some skill set that you just mentioned, and being a good demand planner calls for another skill set, which is also a lot of communication. So I would say if you're really good demand planner, you will be able to create a good model, but that's not per se that you're going to be a good data scientist.
And I think that's quite fair. And that's what my point was at the beginning. I think there's some good demand. And I said equal offender here. Demand planners, a lot of them can't really make that transition into the coding, building models, having that project set of, really developing the method and the scientific curiosity you're talking about as well. So equal offender, I'm saying they can't work the other way. What I'm wondering though is, and the reason I even had this podcast, the reason I'm having this conversation and brought you all the way from Belgium to my little home in Kentucky to have this discussion with me, is because what I'm seeing is a lot of people coming out of college, looking at data science as this sexy field they want to get into, and companies trying to put them into a demand planning role. And there's a lot that can do very well in it. But we have to understand there is right now some differences, and companies may want to look at those differences and really be able to utilize those differences well inside the organization, or how do you make that transition? So that's kind of my next question. All these new recruits coming out of college that want to be, in the sexy field of data science, and they don't look at demand planning as that sexy, but now they're going to start doing demand planning. How do we transfer some of these skill sets into becoming demand planners now? That's the next step we need to be able to take. Is there capabilities of doing that, or are they really, we're going to have to keep them as separate roles?
No, for sure, you can definitely, as someone who studied at university and college data science, you can move to a demand plan role because you have this background in data and data analytics that will enable you to just look at the data and understand what matters and what does not. You will be able to create a really good, I would call it a baseline forecast that might be really good. Starting from there, I would advise these guys, okay, you could create a really good model. Maybe it's going to take you 3-6 months, but moving forward, what you're going to need to do is talk to people to see things that your model is not able to see, which is basically calling the client, calling the production facilities, just to know any information about what they are doing right now, right? And I think as a data scientist, it's important to understand that your model does not know everything. Your model is not able to call the client. Your model is not able to look at the window and see if it's raining or not, right? So as human, you just have to accept that model can get you up to a certain level. And as data scientist, you'll be able to bring a really good one. But from there, as a human, you need to bring some kind of extra layer of intelligence. And I think this is what we need to ask and train those guys to do. But I'm quite sure that the old generation of people that do not know data science will be able and ready to train the new generation into those kind of mindset.
That's some great advice, because really you hit on the key points that I think it's almost taking that scientific mindset, that curiosity, and adapting it to collaboration, adapting it to new sources of inputs and features that you may not have considered, like people's judgment and things of that sort, into a forecasting process. That you're taking that scientific method to a collaborative process is what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. I think the word here is really collaboration. And as data scientists, I think that, and I love to quote that in the book, we know as data scientists that if you create a model, the best model is basically bring different sub-models into one meta model. And by bringing different prediction into a single one, you're going to add more intelligence to it. So it's the same with human. you come up with a forecast, and then it's collaboration. You ask for different people for different inputs. And as data scientists, it's really clear that if you ask for different people with different mindsets, their input, you're going to end up with a better number.
Okay. So my next question then would be, let's go into the future. What's that function going to look like in the future? Is the data science going to be part of supply chain? Or is demand planning going to be part of a data science function in the future? I mean, it could go either way. And this is opinion now. So I'm purely asking your opinion because I know I have one. So asking your opinion now is, which direction are we going to kind of democratize some of this, science part of it and make it more proliferate inside of a organization?
So Eric, you're asking me to do a forecast, right?
Yeah. As a data science, I know that may be difficult for you as a data scientist, but hey.
Let me make a model about it. I would say that as a data scientist, you're really able to do some good model if you understand the business. I wouldn't be really good at making a model about something I never heard of. So I'm as a data scientist, I'm able to do models for supply chain because I know what demand planning is. I know what inventory are. I know planning. I know production. So when I need to create a model, I know what needs to be taken into account. So I definitely think that if you're a big business, a big company, and you have the ability to create a data science team inside supply chain, so basically a quantitative team that would be specialized into bringing those machine learning or quantitative model to the world of supply chain. But at the same time, those guys would really know what a supply chain is. I think this is really the best spot. Rather than to move demand planners out of demand planning and move them to data science, I wouldn't bet on that. I would really go the other way around, saying I would advise companies to develop a data science team within supply chain. Because of course, today we discussed demand planning, but you could also require those kind of models for many other things like inventory optimization.
Yes, definitely. And I think in your book is Data Science for Supply Chain, and it talks a lot about where you can actually impact a lot of supply chain from a forecast perspective. Your next book is going to be on inventory and really talking about that aspect as well. So I think that's a great point. Now, in my perfect world, it's going to be an independent function just for create the unbiased part of a forecast, because I see that forecasting capability of not only impacting supply chain, but when you're adding in the data science piece of it, that scientific method, the curiosity, the external variables as well, putting all that together, I think you now can impact the company. You can now look at prescriptive analytics and marketing and, sales. And I really think as an independent function, it takes the bias away from it. This is my opinion. But those two work in harmony together to really impact the entire organization, not just the supply chain. So that would be my hope going forward. But I definitely understand your point of view on this as well, that it's really better to enable supply chain and demand planners opposed to trying to take them out of their element, is what you're saying, and make them something that they're not as well, away from where you're using the forecast. My last piece I want to cover here is we talked a little about the data science going to demand planning. I think it's critical we also talk about, I said, equal opportunity offender. The demand planners kind of stop relying on the way they did things and start looking at new ways of doing things and becoming more data science. And that's why I really loved your book. It really lays out, and by the way, I have some, dog ears in here with some pages folded that I go back for reference myself. It was a great book. It laid out exactly how you can use data science today. Has a lot about Python you utilized, which is, I think, where you're comfortable. R would work just the same. It's where your comfort zone, I'm assuming, is as well. But it lays out great opportunities for demand planners and supply chain analysts really to start making that progression into data science as well. And I think that's what you wanted to accomplish with this book, if I'm correct.
Yeah, totally. What I see, and I receive a lot of messages from people saying that, okay, Nicolas, today I'm in this demand planner or supply planner role. I love data. I would like to go a bit beyond what Excel is able to do, or we are just using here moving average. How can I just move forward with my company? And I'm saying to these people, look, actually, it's not that difficult. Opening up, starting from scratch in Python is not that difficult. It's actually rather easy. And today yourself on your own computer with a bit of time ahead, you can start to do your own model, your own statistical model on one hand, using machine learning on the other hand, and start to do your own forecasting model. And those will work quite well. Again, I think that 10 years ago, that wouldn't have been possible. First, because machine learning was not yet able to be that accurate, but also because it was much more difficult to get Python in an easy way on a computer. Today, all these tools are getting more and more easier to understand and to grasp for anyone. So I'm really saying to those demand planners that love data, love number, and that just want to go one step further, you can do it. It's actually not that difficult from being someone who loves data to becoming someone who's a data scientist and using machine learning. So it's maybe just 1 or 2 steps to do and you're there.
And I agree. And I challenge anybody out there listening right now. If you're in the role as a demand planner, you're a supply chain analyst, you're, anybody who is into this field, you need to start looking at these other types of modeling available. You understand them a little bit more. That was my first podcast. Go back to podcast number 1, talking about the AI is going to take over our field. And it really talks about that challenge to you. This is something you can do in that challenge. Picking up Nicolas's book, looking at online resources to better understand just some basic coding in Python. There's a lot of different packages available there. You can, just copy and paste. Understanding relationships of data, start challenging that curiosity you have. And I think, a lot of those things are needed in this field as well, and to really become more data science like as well. So I think we can learn from each other.
And I think just to go back to another question, by reading this book and by starting to, as demand planner supply chain, by starting to apply machine learning, I think this is the perfect career move if you want to start this function of being the supply chain data scientist of your company. If you want to start this team, I would start there, starting with forecasting model. And I think that would be the first step toward creating a data science team within supply chain at your company.
And I agree. And I think that'd be an excellent first step. So I want to thank you again, Nicolas. I said it was great having you across the sea from Belgium into my little home in Kentucky.
Thank you.
Be able to talk to this audience here a little bit about data science and demand planning. I said I started off with a little bit, telling people that they couldn't do it, but I think ultimately what I wanted to get across in this interview, and you did it, Nicolas, was saying, hey, there is bridges we can do here to really have data scientists become good demand planners and demand planners become better data science. And I really think that is a potential going forward.
Thank you.
That was a great interview I just did with Nicolas. And if you got anything from that, I hope the thing you got from it is not that far apart, but there is distinct differences. And I said a few times in that interview that I'm an equal opportunity offender. I mean, I started off talking about, data science. I'll talk about demand planners now. Guess what, demand planners? You aren't doing your job fully either. Now I have 0 listeners left. I know. But we need to understand the way you've done things may not be the way you do things going forward. Yes, there's a lot of things that data scientists need to adapt to become better demand planners. You need to be able to deal with that ambiguity better. You need to be more process focused than that project mindset you have. You need to be able to get down in that weeds and the weekly and granularity. But there's some good things that you have available too. That scientific mindset he talked about, that curiosity, that ability to admit when you're wrong and to look objectively at things. Those are skill sets that we need as demand planners. Any type of supply chain analyst, any role you're in, you need to start having that type of mindset now as well. Coding skills. I'm not saying you need to be proficient in R or Python, but there's some valuable coding skills as well. From a demand planner perspective, I said I'll pick on you as well. We don't do enough to look at, most of you out there don't do enough to look at external data. You're not looking at what is impacting the forecast beyond what your internal sales are telling you. You're stuck making the same mistakes. You're not willing to admit when you're wrong. You're stuck on an old model that may not be providing the right information going forward. You're stuck on the wrong inputs that may be creating that uncertainty that you're just assuming is forecast error. There's good things you have, though. There's communication, there's collaboration. You're able to orchestrate processes. Utilize those things. At the same time, the one thing I think we have through this is there's not a lot of differences. Demand planning may be focused on modeling. Data scientists is focused more on the consensus forecasting. So demand planners focus more on that modeling. Data science focus more on that consensus forecasting, the collaboration part of it. Demand planners have that more objective scientific method in managing your data. Data science, look at managing the process. Demand planners, I challenge you, pick up his book. Learn R, learn Python, learn some data science skills. Data science, learn collaboration. Learn how to speak the language of sales. Because there's going to be a time when answers become a commodity, questions become the premium. And that's where we're going in the future. Answers are going to become commoditized. Any system, good systems like Arkiva can produce great answers. What we need is what questions to ask. And those questions just don't come from the curiosity side of data science. They come from the collaboration side and the business acumen side of demand planning as well. It really takes both skill sets going forward to really develop those type of function and type of questions that need to be asked going forward. Answers are going to be available. There's going to be tools. There's going to be ways we can get to the answers. Coming up with the right questions is going to be key. And that's what one of the things that me and Nicolas talked about was where that role is going to fall in the future. And I really see, and I see some companies doing this now, of a centralized predictive analytics and planning type of organization that is more agile, more efficient than. I mentioned that bias part. It takes the bias out of it because you're no longer tied to commercial side or the operational side of it. It really becomes an independent predictive analytics function that really drives multiple functions inside the organization. It saves time, provides the right information quicker for better decision making. And it groups the analysts together to really help maximize and fit between the analyst side of it, the collaboration side of it, and the organizations. It brings that liaison between the questions and answers as well. One of the things Nicolas talked about, he thought the first great step was that demand planners that really need to start looking at how they can broaden their skill set to become more data scientists and really finding just the simple steps you can take. And that's a great first step. Because I really look at, if I had to break this down into 3 steps of building that predictive analytics function inside your organization. First, if it's going to be the emerging side of it. This is where you really have that decentralization. This is where you really have that person that may be 2 roles, that really becomes that champion for the science and the planning side of it working together. And you find that champion inside the organization. And it may be someone outside of that function you're in right now. It may be that person in finance that really has that data bent. Or it may be a person in IT that really has the data-driven side of it. Or it may be someone in supply chain, like Nicolas recommended, really bring data science into supply chain. That really has the data science part of it, kind of passion. But anywhere you have it, you find that champion inside your organization. The next level you're going to find is really where that digital transformation begins, or when you have more questions than you have answers that start to occur inside the organization, and not just in one function, in multiple functions. And that's when you start really planting seeds of how you can help answer those questions and turn data into insights into multiple different areas inside your organization, or really fine-tune your capabilities inside one function to really bring those 2 pieces of data science and planning together inside one. So it's a really hybrid approach at that point where you're really planting seeds and answering questions in every function, or really building out that function capabilities inside one. The last is that vanguard. And this is where you really build that analytics and planning department with specialized roles. I actually have articles about this. There's a journal article that I ask you to reference back. It talks about how this journey can be done inside your organization. I'd be happy to talk to anybody. We actually do assessments for organizations and looking at your predictive analytics and demand planning and other types of functions and how they really work together and do a maturity assessment. I'd be happy to talk to anybody about that, what we can do for you as an organization as well. Reach out at info@ibf.org or myself at eric@ibf.org as well. We can talk to you about that as well. But ultimately, what I'd recommend is finding that path, starting with the individual, starting with your champions, building that hybrid approach. But ultimately, I hope your goal would be building that central predictive analytics and planning function that brings together these roles that can work in harmony and really do feed off each other and enable each other. I started off saying that data science make horrible demand planners. Guess what? I was wrong. They can make great demand planners. And I said demand planners make horrible data scientists. Guess what? I admit, I'm wrong. There's demand planners that can make great data science. We really need to find those synergies in between, find that connection point where we start working together and make demand planners better data scientists and make data scientists better demand planners, and really find the place in the organization where they all fit and they can work and to enable each other. I want to thank everybody for, I said, blowing past 1,000 subscribers in 3 months. Didn't think it was happening. I'm humbled by it, but I said it's a community. It's you. You're part of it. So continue to support this. Continue to like, share, subscribe. Let us know what we're working, what's not working, what you want to hear. And once again, thank you, Arkiva, for being part of this, an S&OP software solution that has a lot of capabilities in it as well. It provides a lot of good answers. So hopefully you can learn a little bit better about what questions to provide it in the future. I want to thank everybody and thank you for another successful podcast. And don't forget, wash your hands.